bean world, where the legumes congregate and regale one another with tales of being kind of a vegetable at the holidays. It's not the best time for these folks. Everybody's excited about the turkey, the ham, or what have you. Yeah, sure. 1 or 2 families will have tofurkey if they hate tradition and themselves. But only when you come together with a plan, an intent to forge a new tomato, will the vegetables learn that we care about them too. A French-Danish boy, half of each, got himself a microscope as a small child for one of these very holidays of which we speak, and it sparked a tiny flame that grew into a blaze, propelling him toward the sciences. Up until that point had been a good-for-nothing D-bag in school. Only interaction he had with his teacher was when the time came to chop off another one of his toes, because this place took discipline seriously. Oh, you keep interrupting me. I'm trying to explain the directions to this multiple choice test. They are self-evident if you understand the words multiple choice and test, but it will take me 10 minutes to make sure all the same. I have an ego the size of Mars. It's not quite Jupiter level because I haven't gotten that administrator's license yet, but once I do, and I'm on top of the academic food chain, when I am principal, then you will fear the sound of my footsteps, which you will recognize immediately upon hearing them, because I will wear clickety-clacking shoes. I want people to worry about my presence when I'm not even there yet. Give me your foot now. And he would say, I'm so low on toes. Can we at least do the other foot? No, state law mandates we go through the whole left foot first. Take the sock off too. It gums up the machine if we get sock lint in it. It's like a toenail clipper that got a bit ambitious and said, I'm clipping the whole toe. And the school only has 4 of these, and we don't budget for replacement parts, so you'd better make sure. Go scrub the toe now. So he goes into the bathroom, and his friend is there. Having recently completed one of the things one does in a bathroom, says, why is your foot in the sink? Also, why do you have 2 toes and a whole lot of scar tissue? He says, get used to this, 'cause you're never seeing it again. That's the opposite, the friend replies, of what getting used to something is for. And then the other friend, the maimed one, says, well, I guess maybe you can cut off a finger later if you got a problem with me. I gotta scrub this now. And he scrubs the toe, goes back to the classroom and says, do your frickin' worst. Teacher says, you'd better thank your lucky mouth that you went with frickin'. If it had been so much as friggin' with a G, you would have essentially a knob for a foot. This is your last chance before you have a very strange foot. Right now you got a pretty strange one, but woo boy, I don't think you want to land face first and full strange. Kid says, that sounds like it probably means something in early 2000s slang. The teacher says, if that was a burn on me, you got away with it, and then slices the toe off. But the simple gift of a microscope The kid's first thought was, let me put my foot under the lens and see just what the school system has done to me. I bet it's a number. And in fact, once he finally got the microscope lens to focus, he did see that his small 17 had been branded somehow into the space between what used to be his middle toe and his index toe. And he's like, I must crack this code. What mystery has educational violence bestowed upon my wound? So he went down to the numbers library. The mathematician behind the counter said, how can I help you, lad? And the lad replied, you can lead me to everything you've got on 17. I know in movies they say microfiche a lot in these situations, so if you have any of that, that might be where I'd like to start. Mathematician says, hold up there, psychopath. Microfiche is for day 3 of a desperate quest. What brings you? Seeking the secrets of 17. Kid kicks off his shoe and sock. Mathematician takes out his travel microscope. He looks and he says, well, I'll be God fucking damned. And the kid's like, oh, swearing's cool here? Guy's like, swearing is the coolest shit, son. Kid goes, this might be my kind of place. Mathbrarian says, anyway, back to the damning God stuff. You've got 17 foot. Kid says, do you know anything about 17 foot? Is there a cure? Guy says, I don't know. I hate to say it, dude. I'ma get the microfiche. So together, they formed a team, pored over the literature, and found that there was an ancient cult of foot-obsessed bitches, in the mathematician's words, who would carve 17s, not on the foot but in their foreheads, so that they could recognize one another. Had something to do with that Steve Martin movie where they all had tweezers. It was called Tweezer Wars. Everybody was pinching stuff. And one guy in the background who had been pinched so hard his brain stopped working was just going, 17 weasels, 17 weasels. Jesus tells me I'm his pal. And they were good to each other. They clamped each other in hugs of such intensity that the layman among the populace would look upon it and say, if only I knew companionship of this grade. I have C-grade companionship at best. I have an acquaintance who will up-nod at me when we pass in the hallway of my apartment building. And that's about the extent of my interaction on the average day. Maybe I should go grab the bread knife and dig a 17 into my own head and see what happens. But most people, by the time they've got that knife just below their hairline, they get second thoughts. So why 17 in the forehead? What is the logical leap? What is the mystical enigma code that links these? There's freaking nothing. Look, if you're in a street gang, your secret signal is probably not going to be... No, it's got to be subtle. Maybe you tap the tip of your tongue with your pinky finger and then go, ah. If the cops see that, they'll just think you have a refreshing pinky. Mathbrarian says, just to be clear, you're not part of this foot cult, are you? And the lad says, no. Why would I come here to discover its existence? Libratician says, it could be part of some long game, but damn, that's a long game. And the kid says, well, the game is afoot. And they wink at each other and share a hearty laugh that lasts 4 years. by which point this child has graduated high school with no further disciplinary infractions because of the joy of chuckling coupled with the driving purpose of this mystery. They've kept him on the straight and narrow. He goes to college, double major, mathematics and philosophy. He's like, is this how it happens? Does the road I walk lead me to joining this cult? And no, he met with them eventually, traced them to a compound in British Columbia. He was like, what can you tell me about this? And flops his one-toed 5-iron of a foot onto the table. And they're like, we can tell you that we love you. You have such a unique foot. Can we study it? I feel like we could learn a lot from it. And he goes, I'm good, never mind, thank you. And thus, in about 12 seconds, he abandoned the quest that had lasted him these 9 years. He's like, now I have all this investigatory drive. What am I going to do with it? And the answer came in the form of a nightmare, sleeping on a bench in a subway station, waiting for a train that was hysterically late because the overwhelming majority of North American public transportation is a big ol' farce. And then the dream tomato shows up. And it says, I am tomato gone. It plants more of itself. All of them jump up out of the cave basin and say, I'm tomato gone too. What a coinky-dink. And they kill the ever-loving hell out of this poor lad. He wakes up screaming. Nearby hobo comes over, gives him a tissue so he can blow his nose. The scream was a little bit nasal. He says, thank you so much. Like on the scale of what you have to give, this is huge. I will treasure this tissue forever. Hobo says, please don't. It is full of your mucus. Perhaps there's some other way you could commemorate the occasion. Guy's like, how about we join forces? I make you a scientist. The hobo looks around the station, sees that nothing there looks like a thing he has to do today, and says, all right. So together they engineer Big Ass Tomato. It made the cover of Newsweek, but that's about as far as the average individual's exposure to it went. Nobody's buying these big tomatoes except for the beans. Have their own holiday celebration like we're putting vegetables at the forefront. No, it's not weird we eat each other. This is what we're for. So they gather around. And the elder bean says, who wants to say grace? And then the granddaughter subtly rolls her eyes, but there's a little side glance from grandma. She's like, better play this off. She says, I'll say grace. They all clasp bean hands together and bow their beans, and granddaughter intones, Almighty Veggie God, please bless us with your tasty wisdom. The bitter crunch of your exterior gives way in our supplicating mouths to a melty sensation, roughly equivalent to that of accidentally squirting hand lotion up your butthole and forgetting it happened because you had a very odd week. And then when you wake up next morning, you briefly think you're having digestive distress. Then you poop out hand cream and you're like, oh wait, never mind, I'm fine. This tomato symbolizes to us the beauty of your grace and the wisdom of your reign. May neither ever end. Amen. And then Grandpa takes his tomato knife and slices off a wing, hands it to the granddaughter and says, good job. Someday you'll make a wonderful high priestess for us, But in her heart, she's already lost to the worship of false idols. She has a caramelized tomato collection that she shrimped away from a Jesus in distress, a crying human godchild. Oh, small Jesus, what's the matter? She said when they ran into each other on the playground, and he said, my father has forsaken me. I asked him for candy apples. Instead, he gave me caramel tomatoes. I don't know why he's punking me like this. I sure hope he never pulls a worse prank on a different version of me at just hypothetically the age of 33 or something. That would suck, but right now this sucks too. And she's like, oh, well, maybe he meant it to symbolize his love for you. And he's like, you really think that could be it? And she says, absolutely. Look, dads are weird sometimes. Maybe he thought this would give you a laugh. Maybe he thought you would like it even more than the apples. Let's have a look-see at him. And he pulls out the caramel tomatoes. She studies them with her foot microscope. No 17, no missing toes. She says, these are beautiful, Jesus. He says, really? You think so? She goes, yeah. I think you should treasure these forever. He goes, you know what? I will. Thanks, bean granddaughter. She says, no problem, young Jesus. And he slips them back into his backpack. But she has latched one of her homing shrimp onto the plate. And the moment Christ goes skipping off with his bag mostly but not entirely zipped up, she gives the signal. She taps her pinky to her tongue and goes, ah! And the shrimp slips out with the caramel tomatoes. Jesus didn't figure it out till he went home. He thought they were vanishing tomatoes, thought this was now 2 concatenated pranks his dad had played on him. And this kicked off a rebellious phase where he grew that beard that everybody loves so much. And also there was this brief period when he was all about rollerblading. The Bible doesn't talk about it, and neither do I.